I'm with you.
Pretty cool.
30 seconds.
Yeah, I was realizing with your mother's departure, I'm the youngest person on council. And I'm almost 40. So, yeah. Old? Is that what you're
Enjoy those dirty
Tom?
30s.
We're not as old as we were when Charlie and I joined. Then everybody was 60 plus.
Now. Oh, that sounds.
Thank you very much. And I want to now call this Durham City Council work session to order at 1 o'clock on August the 6th. And I certainly want to welcome everyone here today. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schewel,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Caballero,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Middleton,
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now ask, are there announcements by members of the council? And I know that Councilmember Reese does have an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two announcements. First of all, I know members of the council received last night a public comment from a group of residents who live at Emerywood Estates here in Durham. This morning, Councilmember Middleton and I spent almost 2 hours on the phone with them to talk about their concerns about a new residential development directly adjacent to them between their neighborhood and NC Highway 55 near Riddle Road here in the city of Durham. And I have reached out to our staff to begin the process of getting some information so that Councilmember Middleton and I can be responsive to their request for information, find out what is possible, and to kind of just give them a better sense of where the city is in terms of how we are holding that developer accountable for what's happening in that part of our city. I know that a number of us, including Councilmember Freeman, have spoken with these residents in the past, but I think Councilmember Milton and I had a great conversation with them today. Very, what I will call a frank and open exchange of views and information on the subject, and we'll continue to do that. But because they had requested an opportunity to speak at the work session today, because we have yet to finalize the process for that, or we have, but that won't be in effect until until a future work session. I just wanted to raise those concerns here and let my council colleagues know that we are engaged on that and will be providing additional information to our colleagues as we get more information from staff about what can be done, whether it's logging and construction trucks going through their neighborhood or opening up stubs to the new development. There are lots of questions that neighbors had, and we'll be working to get them some answers. And as I said, because they wanted to speak at today's meeting and could not for technical reasons, I just wanted to raise that voice here at the council. Councilmember Middleton, before I go to my second announcement, is there anything you wanted to add to that, since you and I were tag teaming on that call this morning?
No, I think you nailed it brilliantly. Thank you.
Well, this is the first time for everything. The second thing I wanted to make an announcement about is last night, a group of Durham residents affiliated with our Sister Cities Durham program joined virtually with a group of residents from our sister city in Japan, Toyama, in Toyama Prefecture, to celebrate 75 years of peace and friendship between the countries of the United States of America and Japan. It was exactly what I needed during this ridiculous and crazy time of global pandemic. And we heard remarks from the mayor of Toyama and a number of other officials in the city of Toyama. I delivered some poorly worded remarks, and the mayor came in to save me at the end with some much more eloquent words. And then all of us, whether it was evening here in Durham, this was at about 7:15 at night here, or in the morning in Toyama, rang bells to celebrate and to honor the friendship between our two countries and our two cities. A number of local churches here in Durham also participated, using their carillons and bell towers to participate in that bell ringing. And it's exactly the kind of thing that I love about our Sister Cities Durham program. So many thanks to Brady Searles, our executive director, Bob Ashley, the president of Sister Cities Durham, as one of two liaisons to the Sister Cities Durham. Councilmember Middleton is our other liaison. It was a rare privilege to be there and to enjoy that fellowship with our friends in Toyama. And as I said, I think during this time we can all use a little bit more celebration about what's positive about the world and our relationships with other places. So I appreciate with that. I'm done with my announcements. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Reese. And, I hope at some time you will be able to join a delegation to Toyama on behalf of the city. So I hope
Mr.
that.
Mayor, I have committed to my family that we're going to go to Toyama at some point between now and December of 2023. So we will be doing that for sure.
Fantastic. Other announcements by members of the council. Councilmember Caballero.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone, my colleagues and those watching. I just wanted to acknowledge that many of us, including council members, will be starting school virtually or digitally in the next few weeks, and I wanted to let city staff know how appreciative I am of their flexibility with our city employees. We know this is a very, very hard time for many of you. And I just want to acknowledge that as a council, we know that we need to have flexibility and really a lot of compassion for parents and caregivers these next few weeks and months as schools open in very, very precarious times. And I ask also for that extension to be towards council members who will be struggling mightily in the next few weeks as we have, our kids in school behind work sessions and other meetings.
Thank you so much, council member. And I do think that both of those points that you made are very important. I do think that means that Councilmember Middleton and myself are going to have a special responsibility because we don't have children at home. So if we can step up, you'll let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Other announcements by members of the council. Councilmember Freeman and then Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mayor Schul, and I appreciate Councilmember Caballero's very present concern. I just want to make sure that I note that I do have to leave promptly at 5 o'clock today for an open house meeting for when my kids start school on Monday, and we are preparing and doing the best that we can. And I am certain that the bandwidth situation will get much worse. But anyway, I also wanted to add that I do want to acknowledge that there are a number of land use concerns that have come up in addition to the Emery Woods area, also in Bragtown and a section over on West Club. And I just want to make sure that staff is aware and paying attention to the folks who've been asking for assistance. And if there's anything that I can do to support that, I just want to make sure that folks are aware I'm paying attention. I'm here. I may not be responding very promptly to emails, but I do expect to keep up with that and here's some follow-up. So, and then in addition to that, I think I shared an email with council members about follow-up regarding some of our conversations and requesting some time in the work session agenda in the coming month or so around addressing some of the MWBE, UBE, WUBE goals that we have set for underutilized businesses, and really would like to get some feedback from the city attorney and city attorney's office and place as we have the discussion. And so I'm hoping that we'll get that lined up in the next few weeks or so that we can have it added to the agenda. And lastly, there was one more thing, and I do apologize. I had a little note, but I will come back to it. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I know that we had Councilmember Reese raise some of these same questions, and I'm glad we'll be having a discussion about that at our last work session. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. Good to see all of you. Good afternoon. I want to associate myself with all of the announcements that were made and let Javier know I'm praying for you and the family, and Uncle Mark Anthony's available if you need any help with the kids. Same for you, Charlie. I also want to associate myself with Charlie's comments about the ringing of bells, and hope and pray that those bells would be a clarion call to peace, not just between nations, but even in our own communities, which is really the on-ramp. Okay, somebody buzzing in. Can you hear? There you go. On-ramp for my announcements today. I want to thank the council again for the what I thought was a heartfelt and robust discussion about gun violence at our last council meeting, our last work session, of course, and I will not enumerate them. Since that last council work session, gunfire has continued to plague our city, and a number of folk have been have become victims of gunfire since that last session. So again, I want to thank us for our seriousness and our willingness to talk about ways that we can form a comprehensive and multifaceted and substantive response to gunfire in our city. I also want to thank council members particularly for their willingness, commitments to work in terms of expanding violence interruption, and for openness to ShotSpotter, to having a discussion about ShotSpotter. And I want to make two announcements relative to moving what I hope will be a comprehensive governmental response to gun violence in our city. So Durham's watched a lot, as you know, and folk track us and what's going on in Durham, and they follow us in the media all over the nation, all over the world. Good and bad, positive, negative. Durham is just that city. We're the it city. On yesterday, Mr. Mayor and council colleagues, I had a conversation with an executive from ShotSpotter. It was a pretty free-ranging and comprehensive conversation, and I want to announce today to you, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, and I want to announce to the city that ShotSpotter has made a representation that they are willing to do a no-cost, no obligation, 6-month trial in our city with their technology for us to see if it works. That includes the attendant consulting work that goes with the department as well. Let me repeat that. They are willing to do at no cost or no obligation for half a year a pilot in our city to see if this technology would serve us, one, in going after repeat shooters, and two, potentially saving lives. I'm pleased to announce that. On behalf of children living in this city, in neighborhoods like the one I grew up in Red Hook, Brooklyn, during the height of the crack epidemic, where I was lulled to sleep at night by gunfire and became desensitized to it. On behalf of mothers that have buried children, and for the mothers that come up to me constantly and ask, what are we going to do about gunfire? I think we should take that deal. I think we should take the deal, and I think we should keep our money in our pocket. It's a pandemic. We know that we are stretched for money, but we also know that many of the issues that plague Black and brown communities have been exacerbated by this pandemic, and that gunfire has not ceased or been silenced since the start of this pandemic. I urge us to get them before us as soon as possible, to present the details of their proposal, for us to ask whatever questions we have, to have whatever debate we need to have about over-policing. One thing we won't have to talk about is money for about at least half a year. And I think we owe it to our children to see if this technology could help us save some lives and get some shooters off the street. Black lives do indeed matter. And I think we can get the test to see if we can save some of them for free. So I put that to you. I'm excited about that announcement. I think it's something that we should be pleased with. It's something that Wilmington and Goldsboro and New York and Chicago are paying for. We get to try it for free. So I want to announce that. I also want to ask that in pursuant to what we said about violence interrupters, that we consider at some point in the near future having a presentation before us on the violence interrupter program to look for on-ramps and ways that the city can either expand in concert with the county or initiate our own version of that program in the city. Once again, with an eye towards crafting a comprehensive, multifaceted, muscular, robust response to gunfire in our city that will give us the moral authority to stand before our people, even if we can't causally point to something we've done in a particular shooting, but be able to say that we are literally doing everything we can as a city to combat this problem, rather than thoughts and prayers and showing up at vigils and funerals and wakes, which is becoming very heavy on my soul and weary for many of us in the city. More so for those whose children they're actually burying. So I'm just there to bring regards and well wishes on behalf of the community. So those are my announcements, Mr. Mayor. I want us to consider bringing the ShotSpotter team in to talk about the specifics of this remarkable offer that they have made to our city. And I'd also like us to look at a time when we can have a conversation or a presentation in concert with staff regarding violence interrupters to begin to craft our comprehensive response to gun violence in this city. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Middleton. I know that the city manager told me he had also heard from ShotSpotter with that offer. And so I'll be talking to him about what the next step ought to be. I agree with you. Good idea. We can certainly schedule a conversation with, I think we would want to hear from the county about their violence interrupter plan, and we can certainly do that. So thank you for those. Thank you both for those. Thank you for both of those announcements. Councilmember Freeman.
I apologize. I appreciate those comments, Councilmember Middleton, and I want to make sure I associate myself with them. And I also wanted to add the last note that I had, which was to see if there was any interest of council to hear back from Parks and Rec and Office of Workforce and Economic Development around some supports for children who will be learning virtually and figuring out what kind of support we can add to the community. And just wanted to kind of put that out there so that we're all thinking about what that might look like and make sure that staff is supporting in any way that I mean, I'm not aware of what's happening right now. So I just want to make sure that if there is something, I would love to be brought up to speed. So thank you.
Thank you. I know that Laura Khalil from our Office on Youth is coordinating with Parks and Rec and other relevant city departments. And I think we could ask the city manager that at the appropriate time that we hear from them either in writing or in person, so we would know, we would understand what the city is doing to support. So thank you for that. Any other announcements? All right, thank you all so much. We'll now move to, I don't want to skip anything like I usually do. We'll now move to priority items by the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good afternoon, everyone. Certainly, we will work on scheduling the first two items that Councilmember Middleton raised, and then I think it will be easier for us to get you a memorandum of a report, some kind, on the work that staff, DPR, and Office on Youth is doing associated or proposing to do associated with some child care and after school care things, particularly in light of not wanting to burden what likely will be continued fairly large work sessions over the next several months. So we'll get you something on that. Have several priority items this afternoon. One, agenda item number 1 related to the city council minutes. There are a number of attachments 1 through 6 that have been updated. Agenda item number 6, which is the National Association of City Transportation Officials Streets for Pandemic Response and Recovery Grant. The fire department or the transportation department is requesting that the rules be suspended on this item, this grant award today, to address the transportation needs associated with the pandemic, but specifically because the project must be started by October 1, 2020 and must be completed and then funds expended by November 1st, 2020. And it would be important to us to get started and not have to wait several more weeks to initiate that. If council has any questions about the grant, certainly staff is prepared to respond to that. Agenda item number 12 is a supplemental item that has been added at the request of Councilmember Reese, I believe, is the discussion of the Ward 3 vacancy. And then finally, I am requesting that the City Council hold a closed session at the end of this meeting pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11 A6. And the motion is to go into closed session to consider two distinct personnel matters. The first consisting of consideration of the conditions of appointment of an interim city manager, and the second one entailing the investigation of a complaint against an individual employee. Those are my priority items this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. You have heard the manager's. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Reese, that we approve the manager's priority items. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The ayes have it. The motion passes 6-0. Madam Attorney, do you have any priority items today?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I do not have any priority items today.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, any priority items?
Good afternoon, everyone. The City Clerk's office has no items.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. All right, we will now move to the administrative consent items, beginning with the City Clerk's office. Item 1, approval of City Council minutes. Lots of minutes from the Clerk's office, a lot of meetings, and hard to do in this format, and appreciate them very much. Item 2, boards, committees, and commissions attendance reports for July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. Departmental items, budget and management services department. Item 3, policy linked cities and counties for fines and fees justice grant. Thank you to Councilmember Freeman and all those who have been active on this, on our staff. Item 4, City Council's office discussion of the proposal and 4 recommendations of the joint City County Renewal and Recovery Task Force. This is going to be a presentation. Item 5, City Manager's Office, Raleigh Durham Airport Authority, RDUAA, Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Airport Improvement Project Grant Offer. Item 6, Department of Transportation, National Association of City Transportation Officials, Streets for Pandemic Response and Recovery Grant. This item is a priority item by the City Manager. Let me read through the rest of these and then we'll come back to item 6. Item 7, purchase authorization for the replacement of 8 Go Durham buses. Item 8,
Mayor, I don't want to pull that item. I just want to point out to the council and to the folks watching at home that these buses are directly related to future service expansions for Go Durham bus service here in Durham. It's fantastic that we've been able to include these funds in the budget for the transportation department in Go Durham. It'll make a huge difference in our capacity for transit service in Durham. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. You're exactly right. Item 8, Department of Water Management, agreement for watershed protection with Triangle J Council of Governments and authorization to participate in Triangle Land Conservancy Down to Earth Farms project. This is great. I love the regional cooperation. I do have one question that I don't need to pull this item, but would appreciate if we could hear from the administration before we get to the Monday night meeting. The $424,000 from the landowner, my question is that donation being made in form of the donation of the land? Exactly what is that? And so if the council could get an email and answer that prior to Monday when we have our meeting, I would be appreciative. Under the Finance Department, item 9, travel management service contract. Under Public Works, item 10, utility extension agreement with SR Patterson Place LLC. Under Public Hearings, City County Planning Department, item 11, A19-00008, Z19-0023, Farrington Towns. Under Supplemental Items, City Council's Office, item 12, discussion of Ward 3 vacancy timeline. And we're going to have that, we have the 2 discussion items, items 4 and item 12. But I think now what we'll do, and then to be followed by the closed session, what we'll do now is to go back to item 6, the National Association of City Transportation Officials Streets for Pandemic Response and Recovery Grant. This is a $25,000 grant to support the Shared Streets Initiative. And I see that Sean Egan is here. Sean, we're happy to hear any comments that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is a great opportunity for us to build on our Shared Streets program, which has identified streets where we can improve access for bicycles and pedestrians across Durham. We're involved in a public engagement and community outreach for that initiative right now. And so as part of this, we partnered with Spirit House for the application, and they're working with us to engage with the community to make sure that there's a clear understanding in the community and support among the residents of these streets. And we are looking forward to getting the results of that public engagement and then being able to move forward and use this grant funding to help us improve the safety and multimodal access on our streets. And I have here Ellen Beckman if there are specific questions about the program schedule or implementation.
Thank you, Sean and Ellen. We appreciate you being here. Colleagues, are there any questions for Ellen? This is a great program, and I'm thrilled that we are able to do it. If there are no questions, I will accept a motion that we suspend the rules and vote on this item.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it, 6-0, and the motion passes. And now I'll accept a motion that we adopt the grant ordinance.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, that we accept the grant ordinance. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
Aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The ayes have it, 6-0, and the motion passes. Thank you, Sean and Ellen, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, we have, according to my calculation, just the 2 discussion items followed by the closed session. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll begin with item 4. I'm sorry, yes, with item 4, which is the discussion of the proposals and 4 recommendations of the Joint City-County Renewal Recovery and Renewal Task Force. We have with us today the co-chairs of that task force, Katie Galbraith and Matisha Sims. And I see Katie is with us. Is Matisha also able to make her video available?
I'm with you, but the host is not allowing me to turn my video on.
Okay, that'll be corrected in a second.
Okay.
So if you all could make Matisha Sims' video and audio available. There she is. Good, Matisha. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Sure.
We are joined today by our fabulous co-chairs of our Recovery and Renewal Task Force. They have done an amazing job. I think that I know that many of you all know either one or both of Katie and Matisha. They have done a fantastic job. Katie is the president of Durham Regional Duke Regional Hospital, and also is the chair of the board of the Durham Chamber of Commerce. Matisha is vice president of Blue Cross Blue Shield, and for many of us who've been able to serve on the city audit committee, we know her as the chair of that committee, who served on that committee for many years, done a fantastic job. The task force has been operating for close to 80 days, I would think now, in a 100-day mission. Colleagues, as you know, the task force has extended its time of service. All the members have agreed to continue to serve. The intensity of the meeting schedule, it's been meeting every week on Friday mornings for a couple of hours, and has had a really great agenda and a really great program of work. I know, colleagues, that you're familiar with much of this. They will review it. I know there'll be some review of that, as well as to talk about the 4 budget proposals. Just to talk a little bit about the extension of this task force work, the task force has agreed to meet through May. The intensity of the meetings will be ramped back twice a month in September, and then after that, monthly. The roundtables will also continue to operate. They have engaged hundreds and hundreds of Durham residents and businesses. They will continue to operate as needed as well. And they are joined, Katie and Matisha are joined by other members of the task force who are with us today. And Madam Clerk, if you would make them available to the cameras as well, that would be good. They're mainly here to be available for questions, but we do have other members of our community who are with us who will be task force members who are present to contribute if there are questions that need to be answered. I'm now going to ask Ryan Smith if he has anything to add before I turn this over to Katie and Matisha. Ryan, as you know, has been staffing the task force and has done a great job.
Mayor Schrill, I have no additional comments and look forward to the presentation from our co-chairs. Thank you.
Great. Katie, are you up first?
Actually, I think Matisha is up first.
Matisha?
Thank
All
you.
right.
So thank you for
Matisha,
those.
welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for those comments. And just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone. And thanks so much for allowing us an opportunity to be on your agenda today. So in the time that we have with you today, we would like to share a little background on how we got here, and here meaning a formal request to the city to fund some initiatives that position us, Durham, to be more proactive and responding to this pandemic versus being reactive. We'll also spend some time discussing the budget proposals that we're asking the city and the county to fund. And most importantly, we want to address any questions or concerns that you may have about these proposals. I think it's important to give you a little bit of background on the Durham Recovery and Renewal Task Force. So we came together for the first time in mid-May with the primary mission to advise Mayor Schrill and Chair Jacobs on the best ways to keep Durham safe as we recover and renew not just our economy, but our people in Durham as well. We have a task force of 15 very diverse individuals that are strong community leaders, and they have been very actively engaged in driving forward our mission. When we started our work in May, we did ask ourselves, do we need a budget? But we decided that we wanted to first focus on our mission and work on advancing our mission. And we were also optimistic that we would be able to secure some volunteer time as well as donations from organizations in the community to advance our mission forward. So instead of focusing on the budget, we focused on our mission. And I'm really proud of the work that we've accomplished in 80 or so days. I've seen this task force truly serve as a catalyst to get some initiatives off of the ground, and our work has provided a great forum to engage our community. Some of the notable items that we've moved forward includes developing the Back on the Bull campaign, and I'll spend a little bit more time talking about that when I go with the first budget proposal. We've also figured out how to provide face coverings to our vulnerable populations. We've created an online marketplace for local providers of masks, uplifting our minority-owned and women-owned providers. We've created many active roundtables, and this has probably been the most instrumental forum that has allowed us to hear directly from the community. And not just to hear about their challenges and their struggles, it's provided a forum for us to collectively brainstorm on ways to address those challenges. We've had roundtables focused on places of worship, vulnerable populations, restaurants, personal services, immigrants and refugees, and the list goes on. We've also done some foundational work to help us better understand how we measure economic recovery, and we're actively working to attack the COVID-19 crisis in our Latinx community. So that's just a quick view into some of the work that we've done over the past 80 or so days, and it's by no means intended to be an all-inclusive list. But from the great work that we've done, we've realized that we're now at a point that in order to continue to move forward with some of the initiatives that we truly believe are key enablers to helping us on this journey to recover and renew, we need some funding. We have effectively leveraged pro bono time where possible. We've leveraged donations from the community where possible, and we continue to explore ways to leverage other resources to keep our momentum going. But now that we're at this juncture and we recognize that we do need some funding, the task force recently designed a budget process to help us identify which initiatives we wanted to bring forward with a request for funding. We certainly understand that other efforts are happening at the city and at the county to address our response to this pandemic, and that work requires funding as well. So for that reason, we did take into consideration those initiatives as we were going through the budget process. Mayor Schul and Chair Jacobs sent out a request to the city and the county to identify initiatives that required funding so that we could take a look at our budget proposals to first and foremost make sure that we weren't duplicating any work, and to also identify if there was any opportunities to leverage existing work. So we went through that process, the budget process, and we used a small subcommittee of task force members. And we also invited Jim Groves from the Emergency Operations Center to be a part of this small subcommittee. And this subcommittee evaluated the budget proposals to make sure that the proposals aligned with the guiding principles of the task force work, our mission. From those proposals, we made a recommendation to the task force as a whole on the proposals that we wanted to move forward. After some further vetting from the task force as a whole, we unanimously agreed that we wanted to move forward with 4 of the proposals. So today we're asking for your support of 3 of the 4 proposals. The city has already agreed to fully support 1 of the 4 proposals that we brought forward, and that proposal allows disposable masks to be dispersed on every Go Durham bus to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission among our transit riders. The city's transportation department has been passing out face masks at the central terminal, which is great, but many transit riders had to ride maybe a bus or 2 to get to that central terminal before they even had access to a free mask. We are very appreciative of the city for quickly responding to this request, and disposable face masks will be offered on all Go Durham buses in the next few weeks. The task force has provided an initial supply of 6,000 free face masks, and we've also identified a local source that can supply tens of thousands of additional disposable masks at a very discounted rate. So again, we continue to leverage resources to help us proceed in a fiscally responsible manner. I sincerely thank the city and Sean Egan and his team in the transportation department for their commitment to the health of our transit riders and for moving forward with a sense of urgency to make this happen. So now I'm going to share the first proposal with you, and then Katie will share the 2 additional proposals. So the first proposal that I'm going to talk about is the Back on the Bull communication plan. The task force partnered with local experts at McKinney and Duke University's Center for Advanced Hindsight to develop the Back on the Bull campaign. This campaign is designed to help us keep Durham open and reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission by encouraging greater voluntary compliance with public health best practices. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out the Back on the Bull website, I strongly encourage you to do so. But what really sets Back on the Bull apart is the integration of behavioral science into a best-in-class health and safety checklist that helps businesses and other establishments make concrete plans for steps that they will take to keep their employees and their customers safe. Businesses can complete an industry-specific checklist where they commit to evidence-based practices that are proven to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. After they complete the checklist, they can print out personalized, well-designed posters with the top 5 actions that they're taking, and they can post those posters on the entrance at their establishments. On the actual website, residents can see every business that has participated, and they can also clearly see every commitment that businesses are taking to keep them safe. And we think this type of transparency is crucial as we work toward recovering and renewing. This transparency will help restore and/or inspire confidence among residents in Durham and provide the necessary awareness when needed when re-engaging with businesses. In the first 3 weeks of the campaign, over 200 businesses completed the health and safety checklist. That's a good start, but we still need to increase awareness and participation. The task force has developed this campaign with over $150,000 in pro bono contributions from local experts. But in order to fully realize its public benefit, we need additional funds to increase awareness of this campaign and its impact. We want businesses to know that residents are aware of the campaign and are on the lookout for the Back on the Bull signs and storefront windows for assurance that places are doing their part to reopen safely. We've built an amazing team of communication professionals that include Discover Durham, Duke University, DDI, Durham Chamber, the city and county staff, and others. These groups have estimated that we can consistently reach about 50,000 residents with no additional cost. But that's simply not enough. Our current plan will help us reach approximately 300,000 Durham residents at least 6 times between now and the end of this year. I do want to give thanks to the city for already contributing an initial $24,100 to fund some initial communication expenses and to cover all translation expenses. Because of the city's support, we were able to roll out this campaign in English and Spanish. So the ask is for the city and the county to share the cost of this proposal. And when I say share, split it 50-50. The total proposal is approximately $264,000. So the ask of the city is $132,000. We did present these proposals to the county on Monday. And for this specific proposal, the county has agreed to move forward with seeking approval of $100,000 related to this ask and reevaluating the effectiveness of the campaign to determine if they will contribute some additional funds. I do want to acknowledge Susan Amy from Discover Durham, whose team has put together our detailed communications plan, and they've done a phenomenal job. And she's joined today to answer any questions that you might have about the proposal. I also want to acknowledge Mariel Beasley, who has joined today from the Center for Advanced Hindsight. Her team of behavioral scientists contributed hundreds of hours to develop the checklist and the website. And the last thing I'll say about this proposal is this is an urgent request because we've put together a campaign and we've laid out everything that we need to do to continue to communicate to Durham residents about this campaign. And now we're at a point where without additional funding, there's not much work that we can be done as it relates to communicating more about the Back on the Bull campaign. So with that said, I'm going to pause and ask, are there any questions about the Back on the Bull communication plan budget proposal?
Thank you very much, Matisha, for that fabulous presentation, both about the work of the task force in general and this specific proposal. Colleagues, we're going to take these one at a time. As you heard from Matisha, we don't have to We don't have to consider budgeting for the face coverings proposal for our buses because that's already been covered by city funds. And thank you to our administration, as Matisha said, for making that happen. We have before us now to discuss the communications plan. You heard again, just to summarize, that the city and county have each been asked for $132,000 to cover half of each of us, covering half of the plan. The county has agreed, they'll have on their next agenda approval of $100,000, and they want to wait and to see how things go before approving the rest of those funds. And we're being asked to do the same, to provide half of that funding and to do so expeditiously. I thought that our packet had a very good description of everything that, the outlines of this proposal and a lot of the detail, and I'm grateful. Susan Amy again is here, and Susan, thank you for your leadership of this very good group that put this plan together. So I'll now ask for questions or comments by members of the council. And if you want to direct your question to either to Matisha or Susan, Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank our chairs for the extraordinary work that you and the other members of the task force have been doing during this unprecedented situation, unprecedented in modern times anyway. And thank you for your leadership. Your community is a safer place because of the work you're doing. And I can't say enough how thankful I am that you are both willing to undertake this significant responsibility during a time when I'm sure all of our lives are already completely overloaded. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I guess my question is for staff. The $132,000 is to ask from the city. Is that right, Mr. Mayor? Something in that neighborhood? You're already unmuted, Mr. Mayor.
That is correct. That's the number.
Great. And is this the kind of expense that we were contemplating when we established the $5 million COVID relief fund in this year's budget?
Councilmember Reese, as you may recall, we weren't quite sure what kind of expenses we were contemplating back when we proposed the $5 million funding. We just knew there likely was going to be some things that were going to come up. We have, I think I've previously indicated, we've incurred, substantial expenses internally that we are looking at ways that we can recover some of those funds. And to date, I think we've spent the $1 million for the Small Business Recovery and Loan Fund out of that $5 million, and then some smaller amounts that were referenced earlier about some translations expenses and those kinds of things. So really at this point, it is a council determination. What I would say is, we don't really have a kind of open call for funding type things. I anticipate that the council is going to need to continue to evaluate these issues as they come, and acknowledge that at some point that those funds will be used up or will need to be increased. But again, we didn't really have a complete profile of what these expenditures might look like. We just wanted to make sure that in budgeting we had a source of flexibility for the council to make these kinds of decisions.
Great. That was what I was hoping you would say, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
I guess in that case, I think this is a fantastic idea. It's the kind of program that allows us to provide some reassurance to members of the community while encouraging evidence-based practices, and I think it's well worth $132,000, and I would support moving forward with this particular portion of the request at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Other Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm excited about this. I'm glad it came forward, and I want to just acknowledge all the extensive amount of work that's been done to to do translation and interpretation in general with the task force, with the Back on the Bull campaign. I know it's taken a lot of effort and work, and I just want to appreciate everyone's dedication to expanding language access.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions for Ms. Sims or Ms. Amy? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, all of you. And I just want to thank the co-chairs so much for suiting up on behalf of our city. I think it was Winston Churchill talking about the Britain's Royal Air Force when he said, "Never have so many owed so much to so few." Our city is in trouble. I mean, you guys were called together not because things were going well, but because we are facing an incredible challenge. And this is what it looks like when you have leadership that believes in science, that doesn't govern by polls, that's responsive to their people and is led by compassion. This is what the response should look like. I wish it were so on the national level. So I just want to thank you as a resident, forget being on the council, just as a resident, for the work that you're doing on behalf of an entire city. And we hope we can return you back to your normal lives as soon as possible. I do have a question. First off, I fully support funding at the full level. This task force was created under emergency powers. I think we're still in an emergency. I'm not really in the mode of kind of doing a little bit and seeing and then giving the rest. That's not a knock on the county. I trust the leadership that's in place during this emergency. And if you guys say you need 132 grand, I believe you. And I think it'll be well spent. So I'm fully in support of that. I do want to ask about the if you can, how much of that 132 will be administrative or actually going to dissemination, and what type of platforms will we be exploiting? Are we doing television ads or print, or can you give us a sense of what the full rollout of the plan would look like, and how much it's going to cost of that 132, roughly percentage wise?
Yes, thank you,
Thanks.
Councilman Middleton. I'd be happy to. Actually, none of the expense goes to anything except the paid media. All of the services for media planning and buying are being contributed by Discover Durham and other members of the Communications Task Force. We are looking to do two things. One is to reach as broad a section of Durham residents as possible, hopefully all of them. And we're also looking at making sure that, as Wentisha said earlier, looking to make sure that there are multiple impressions per person. So the media that we're using are really broad. We're using 7 radio stations, 3 TV stations. In outdoor, we're doing billboards and bus advertising. Online, there's several different ways that we're going using online advertising, including social media, and then 6 different print publications with a real intent to reach all demographics.
You had me at hello. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, great. Any other, Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation as well, Ms. Sims, and I've also appreciated having the opportunity to hear and challenge a lot of the conversation during your Friday meetings in the mornings. And I just want to thank you as well. I don't say it enough, and have an opportunity to just know like how you work through the process and how much attention to detail you've put into this. I know I appreciate that. That Miss Amy has had the opportunity to join the African American COVID response committee, and I wanted to just make sure that you followed up and also joined the Latinx COVID response team as well, and just making sure that the traditional and non-traditional media formats are all included. That was my main concern, and so I wholeheartedly support the funding, and I want to make sure that the folks are reached. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other comments or questions by members of the council? I'm going to ask the manager then that we put the expenditure of the $132,000 for this item on consent for the following Monday night meeting, Mr. Manager.
Be glad to, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much.
And just to be clear, this will be an agreement between the city and Discover Durham.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As you all, I know that you all have been briefed individually, council colleagues, by the chairs of the task force. The manager has also been briefed, and just wanted to let you know that he's also fully aware of these proposals and has asked a lot of good questions. We spent time with Katie and Matisha and the manager recently. Okay, I think, Katie, are you up?
I am up. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your time today, as well as for your leadership really during this, what is truly an extraordinary time. And I also want to just take a moment to say what a privilege it has been to be serving on the Renewal and Recovery Task Force. I continue to be so humbled to have the opportunity to work with such an incredibly dedicated group of leaders from across our community. So in addition to the Back on the Bull communications proposal, I want to share 2 additional funding proposals with you. First is the Community Health Ambassador Program. And we know that to ensure the safety of all Durham residents in the battle against COVID, compliance with public health best practices is really critical. That's face coverings, hand hygiene, social distancing. That's all essential. And so the task force is recommending establishing a Community Health Ambassador Program to really help increase voluntary compliance with these practices and local orders by providing in-person peer support from trusted community members through this new Community Health Ambassador Program. The requested budget for this is $648,047 to be split between the county and the city at $325,000 approximately each. The program would be administered in partnership with UNC Gilling's School of Public Health, and the ambassadors would be culturally competent frontline public health workers hired from the communities they serve and trusted by those communities. And that's really a critical component of this proposal. As part of the commitment to equity, a majority of the ambassadors would come from those communities that have really been disproportionately affected by COVID-19, as we know, including at least 4 positions for bilingual, bicultural, native Spanish language speakers. The ambassadors would be providing in-person support for about 150 hours for 150 businesses a week and other establishments. They'd spend their days visiting with businesses and other organizations to listen, to really understand the needs, to understand any barriers to compliance, to educate and really to observe current practices and partner with those establishment owners or leaders to identify and remove barriers. And we believe this in-person support is really critical to getting that voluntary compliance up. Without this level of support, we expect we will continue to see wide variation in compliance across Durham. And with the investment, we believe we can avoid enacting unnecessary enforcement mechanisms that have been pursued in other communities across the country. We also really want to employ, again, from the communities that have been disproportionately affected. And we want to ensure that the digital divide that we know disproportionately impacts people of color doesn't decrease the level of compliance support for those historically marginalized businesses and establishments. I'm happy to answer questions on this if we want to pause here before I go into the other proposal.
Katie, thank you so much. And do you want to identify other people who were here today who could take questions or comments about this proposal as well?
Absolutely. So we have Kurt Ravisil from, and I probably did not pronounce that last name right, I apologize, from UNC School of Public Health, as well as Pilar Rocha Goldberg from El Centro.
Thank you so much, Katie. Colleagues, as you all know, in past pandemics, health workers being out in the community, educating people about how to stay safe has been absolutely critical. And I am really so pleased that the task force took on this issue. when we first started discussing this, I believe it was at Ryan's suggestion, I reached out to some folks at the University of North Carolina School of Public Health to ask if they would, the Gillings School, if they would join our conversations about how to make this a reality. And to make a long story short, after discussions with our public health director, Rod Jenkins, he made it clear that he was very supportive of this, but that the public health department itself didn't really have the bandwidth to do this. In fact, some of the employees that they have been using for other things, for example, school nurses who've been working on contact tracing, are now going to be called back into school nursing duty. And so with their, at the same time that was happening, we were very fortunate in that Kurt and his team at the Gillings School at University of North Carolina, and by the way, let me just make it clear, I don't root for the University of North Carolina, just in case that hasn't been made clear. That his team came forward with this excellent proposal that the task force has vetted and is now before you. So I'm going to now ask colleagues if there are any questions or concerns that you would like to raise, either with Katie, with Kurt, or with Pilar, who's also been deeply involved in this discussion. Councilmember Freeman and then Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I just had a couple questions. Noting that the North Carolina Central University also has a School of Nursing, and I just want to make sure that they're being engaged in that conversation as well. And there was I'll come back to it. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you,
That's an
Councilmember.
excellent point.
Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how excited I am about this opportunity for the city and county to work together. I know that there's a group called Latin 19, which started way back in March with a variety of healthcare providers, now many folks from several counties. And I can say that this is something that continuously comes up on the call. How do we get the message of solid public health out into communities, especially communities where it's hard to get information and there's a lot of kind of overwhelming, conflicting information. And so just really pleased to see this. I know this is going to do so much good in Durham. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Kurt and Katie, thank you for your leadership on this. And to my dear sister and friend Pilar, always good to see you. Thank you for your continued service to us. How long will the 600 and so odd grand keep this initiative viable?
This is a 12-month proposal.
12 months.
Yes.
And does that 600,000 that includes salary, training,
It does.
accoutrement, everything?
It does.
Yeah, I'll be happy to just clarify a little bit. 2/3 of the salary goes to ambassadors, which is the bulk of it. Okay, and we'll have about 10 people, as you heard. A minimum of 4 will be native Spanish speakers or Spanish fluent and culturally trained. We are going to be partnering with all of the organizations that have been nominated before. So the group Latin 19, El Centro, many others we'll be partnering with. My department, which I'm the department chair of at the School of Public Health, has had a special relationship with NC Central since the 1950s. There's a health education department as well as nursing that we will also reach out to, because I think that's a great point as well, Councilmember Freeman. And I would also like to acknowledge briefly Dr. Yesenia Marino, who's joining me on the call, who will be a co-investigator. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's it for me. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Reese.
Mr. Mayor, this, excuse me, this may be one of the most exciting things to come across our agenda in quite some time. I think Councilmember Middleton referenced failures at the federal level. The fact that cities and counties are having to pony up for this kind of effort is yet another example, because this is the kind of effort that you would want to see being fielded nationwide as part of a robust federal response to this virus that knows no boundaries, certainly no state or federal boundaries. but here we are. And as is often the case, communities like Durham are rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work. I want to thank our colleagues, the investigators at the Gillings School. Unlike the mayor of Durham, I am a proud Tar Heel fan. Having graduated from law school at Carolina, my wife, Dr. Laura Helms-Reese, is a member of the foundation board for the School of Public Health. Spent 12 years at Carolina, getting 3 degrees, and is much smarter than I am. And she has been very excited as I've given her updates about this particular specific policy proposal, and just wanted to say how great it is to have the support of the Gillings School in Chapel Hill here in Durham to help us with this really fantastic program, and I'd be happy to support that today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, council member. I did bring my hat, just in case you.
Is that why you walked away, Mr. Mayor? We saw you. I just had, yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's creepy when you do that and you walk back in. It's like your body is floating through space, and then you sit down. Try not to do that again.
I'm trying to imitate Councilmember Middleton's background. Thank you very much, Councilmember, for those comments. Councilmember, any other? Councilmember Freeman.
I hesitate because it's such a good good faith effort and coming together to figure out exactly how to address this. And I can't walk away without sharing my concern, and that I've shared this recently, and I know I've heard it a number of times. So I'm not sure how many of you know that not this Saturday just passed, but the Saturday prior to, there were about 300 people who were tested for COVID at St. Joseph's AME Church. And the overwhelming response from folks there and folks involved is that there's this disconnect in the Black community around who is engaged and how people are engaged and what barriers are in place. And so I'm concerned that anytime that we talk about, equity, and we talk about language as the kind of the baseline of it, we exclude the fact that just because you speak English, you subscribe to a culture that is American. And I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that the folks who are Black in this community, Black, Brown, African American, Afro, what have you, Latino, there's a different reach that has to be met, or a different level of outreach that has to be made. And I appreciate the community health worker aspect of it, but I want to make sure that it's not just missed. I appreciate the 4 Latinx or Spanish speaking native Spanish speakers aspect of it, but you have to say the same thing for people that are Black. And I just want to be clear in saying that. Thank you.
Thank you for that important message, council member. Pilar?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to say something about it because I have the same feeling. And actually, yesterday in our community engagement roundtable, we had this discussion and talk about it and how we can bring other voices to the task force. So I hear your concern because I have the same concern. We've been, since I came on board to El Centro 11 years ago, we've been trying to work in how to improve the relationship between African Americans and Latinos. And I believe sometimes when we do this work that is very needed, we are pulling apart because we are fighting again for resources and attention. So we talked about this yesterday in the community engagement roundtable, and we will continue this conversation. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much for those comments. Any other questions or comments by council members at this time? And so, Katie, again, could you summarize the ask of the council?
Yes, so this is, the total cost on this is $648,047 to be split between the county and the city. So it's approximately $325,000 each.
Thank you. I'm going to refer first to Ryan Smith. Ryan, do you have any comments on this? And then I'm going to ask the city manager to comment, because I know Ryan we've discussed a couple of details of this that I think will be useful for the council to hear in terms of moving forward.
Mayor Schul, I just want to share one from the county commission side that they also discussed this proposal, and Chair Jacobs instructed me to share both with the task force and with the city council that the county commission will be supporting this at some level, but they have asked UNC School of Public Health to resubmit their budget and look for ways that they could contribute additional funds. And so that has been done, and they're going to be reviewing that at an upcoming work session. But there is strong support for it. They will be funding it at some level, but we do not know if they'll fund it at the full level of the request yet. Councilmember Freeman, I want to again acknowledge your comment as well and say that I am certain that this program will do exactly as you have stated too. And I appreciate that comment, and that when we talk about hiring individuals from the community who are representative of our residents who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, we certainly also mean Black people, and it's important to say that clearly. So thank you for that comment, and we'll be sure to work with UNC on that request too. Mayor Schul, I'm not sure what other, you may have had other specific things in mind that.
No, those were the comments I was interested in. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly fully supportive of and acknowledge the need for this work. Just from a procedural and a procurement standpoint, I would envision that the city funds would actually flow through Durham County or Durham County Department of Public Health, not directly between the city and the Gillings School. It seemed that it would make more sense to have the contract administered by Durham County or Durham County Department of Public Health, and that we would just be a funder through that mechanism. So I don't know all of the details about how that would work. So I mean, while the council could certainly authorize the expenditure of the funds, we'll have to work out some details as to contractually what that might look like. The other issue that I raised yesterday with the task force that I don't know if we're prepared to talk about today or not, and maybe Kurt can talk about just how quickly this can get ramped up. I personally, and I think I can speak for my colleagues, have just knowing how long sometimes these contractual situations can take to work through the governmental systems, whether that's the university system or whether through the city and county procurement systems. This is important work, and I just was wondering if there's any thought about any interim steps that can be taken to get something going, sooner or quicker than might otherwise take, or if there is any projection of how long it will take to get these contractual arrangements up and running, get folks hired and on so that this important work could begin.
Yeah, that's, I share the urgency that you all have. In fact, I've already worked with my staff to say that if this meeting goes well today, that I was going to start writing all of the job descriptions and have them submitted to HR even before the full approval next week. I am a department chair here, and you're allowed to basically start spending after before your start date, before the contract is fully signed. If you agree to take the risk, if it doesn't go through, that you'll pay for it. And I will start working on this if the start date is the August 15th is which we put it, and we don't have a contract even signed for a few more weeks later, but we know that that's going to be the start date. I'm fully ready to get started working with some temps and some students and really start this as fast as possible. I also point out we got in this revised budget $52,000 worth of in-kind funding from the school. So we're very, very deeply committed to this project, and we'll hit the ground running and definitely get this started quickly.
Mr. Manager?
No, that's fine. I just wanted, in a matter of transparency, wanted to be sure that I was raising the questions to the entire council that I raised to you and the co-chairs yesterday, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those are really important questions. Thank you, Mr. Manager. And Kurt, thank you for that. And I appreciate the manager raising those yesterday with myself and the co-chairs. Colleagues, are there any other questions or concerns? Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to make sure that if we're going to do what we did with the last item and get it on our consent agenda, that we word it such that it's the up to the dollar amount that we've noted, because the county is apparently still negotiating with the school public health, and just want to make sure that up half of the total up to the whatever dollar amount is in the proposal.
Very much agree, and thank you for that. And we'll ask our staff to work on the appropriate wording for that. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the spirit of Councilor Reese's question, I wanted to ask if the county comes in short of the 50% of the $640,000, what happens?
That's an excellent question. My thought would be that we would put our half on consent. If we find whatever we find out prior to that from the county, we can then, if we need to pull it from consent, we could discuss it 10 days from now on Monday night. Councilmember, how does that sound to you?
Sounds great. Sounds great. I was really more asking about the viability with the plan, if there are contingency plans for the entire initiative. If our 300 grand is gonna, I'm assuming it's gonna be there no matter what. But if we fall short of $640,000 because of the county, what are the contingency plans for the initiative?
Well, I believe, let me just say, I'm pretty sure that they would, my understanding from them is that there's a majority support from the county, and that it would be, it wouldn't be, they're not planning to cut their support of this in half. I mean, I think it would be around the edges, but I think it would be important to hear from Kurt on that. If you don't get the full funding, what would be your means of operating, Kurt?
Yeah, so we've pulled together, I've worked with Ryan. Ryan has an alternate budget that's smaller, that has basically around 6 to 7 health ambassadors. So it just means that we would be we would just reach fewer businesses. Our goal is to reach 100 to 150 once we're up and running by the second or third month. 100 to 150 per week. And so it's an ambitious target, but we would scale that down. So we'd still be able to do the initiative. It's just that it would take longer to get to each business.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Any other questions or comments? I believe then that I'm going to suggest that we put this on consent also, and that we ask our staff to figure out the appropriate wording per Councilmember Reese's suggestion. Colleagues, are you good with that? And if we need to, I see some thumbs, good. If we need to make some changes once the county's discussion is moved farther along, we can do that. Everybody good? Mr. Manager, are we okay with that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you, Kurt, and thank you, Pilar. Thank you very much. And Katie, we're on to our final item.
Absolutely, thank you. So the final item is what we're referring to as the Risk Mitigation Fund for Small Businesses. And this fund is really designed to help protect workers and customers by providing small grants to small businesses to subsidize their investments in what are evidence-based practices designed to reduce the spread of COVID-19. So we know there are a lot of steps that businesses can take to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission, things like placing hand sanitizer stations throughout their space, using plexiglass to create barriers, upgrading air filtration and airflow exchanges, moving more activities that are traditionally done indoors, outdoors. Each of these requires at least some modest investment on the part of businesses, which is quite honestly difficult at a time when many of the local business owners have been financially hard hit by COVID-19 and really are struggling to stay afloat and to keep their team members employed during the crisis. So the financial strain that they're under means that even modest investments may be difficult for some and less likely to occur. Now, I'll be honest, there is a lot more work that needs to be done on this particular proposal in terms of developing the logistics and the implementation plan for the fund. But we bring it forward today because consistently from each of our roundtables, we heard that that there was a request for support for expenses such as these. That was the most common request we got from sort of across sectors and the community-focused roundtables, was the need for this. And so, again, in the absence of a fund like this, we're really concerned that fewer businesses will do what's needed to make these evidence-based investments to protect the health of their team members and their customers. We know that the city and county have already allocated money to the Small Business Recovery Fund to help really offset revenue that was lost by those small businesses so they can avoid permanent closure and layoffs. What we're recommending, or one of the things that we would recommend be explored, and I think it's still in the exploratory phase at this point, is to see whether some of those funds that were allocated to the loan portion of that be reallocated or tapped into to reallocate for this purpose. There's been an initial consultation with the city attorney's office and it's thought that this may be possible, although I think we're still learning more day by day on that. And so there's more work that needs to be done. But given the interest in this risk mitigation fund and what I understand is a relatively low participation in the loan program. I think there's been more participation on the grant side of the program, but lower participation in the loan program. We think that that may be a viable option to consider. So that is, again, I recognize that this is not quite as fully baked a proposal as the other two that have come before you, but we thought as a task force that it was really important to get this in front of the council because it, again, has come up in every roundtable fairly consistently for the last several weeks as a need. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Katie. Colleagues, this proposal, as Katie has said, we will not be asking to put this on our next agenda, but we do want to discuss it today. There's been a lot of discussion about various aspects of this, which I think are important. For example, one of those things is that the potential source of funding being from the loan funds that we in the county have already put aside to repurpose some of those funds for this work. That's one possibility, but we need a little bit more legal work on that, as well as we need to consult with our staff and the Carolina Small Business Development Fund. They're important. Of course, those discussions are important as well. There's also some thinking around what would be the best way to support our businesses. Some of this might be, some of this would be in these kinds of direct grants. But for example, we don't want people to need to go through a grant process to get hand sanitizer. It might be much more efficient for us, for example, to purchase a whole lot of hand sanitizer that then people are able to just come get. So these are some of the things that need to be thought through as part of this. But I'm really appreciative of the task force bringing this forward. I agree that it's very important. I think that we need to help our businesses in these ways to maintain the health of their establishments for their employees and for their customers. And I think it will also help our economy come back. So all of these are very important. I'm going to ask Ryan now if he has anything to add because he's been involved in some of the discussions around this as well.
Thank you, Mayor Schul, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Ryan Smith, Budget Management Services. I realize I failed to properly introduce myself last time. I've been working closely with our city attorney's office, and I see that Krista is on the call today, and so she can answer questions about the legality of this. But at a high level, one thing that we worked with is to figure out can we legally create a grant fund for these narrowly defined purposes? And Krista can answer the details of that, but in general, the response we've gotten from the city attorney's office is that for a narrowly defined fund like this, that is providing funding for small businesses or potentially other establishments to make investments that would reduce COVID-19 transmission risk, that for some of those, they would be eligible for grant funds, because I know that was one of the issues around, a loan versus grant fund earlier. So I think one of the things that we still have to work through is what things meet that threshold. The city attorney's office has weighed in an email that various things like traditional PPE, from face masks to hand sanitizer that Mayor Schul mentioned, to plexiglass, things like that all seem to easily pass muster. There's more work to be done about whether or not outdoor dining and things like that that would be assets that would transfer to a business would be allowable, and thinking creatively about that. So again, there's really work to be done about what things could be eligible under such a grant program. But at least the initial word that we've gotten is that such a narrowly defined program could legally be done by the city if it wanted to. There is a lot of continued conversation and an email that came right before this meeting about whether or not, there are different thoughts about whether or not it makes sense to use the loan fund and to repurpose it. And I've had a conversation with Brian Smith and OEWD earlier this week about their thoughts that are kind of changing on how to increase participation in the loan fund. So I would just reiterate, there's a lot of work left to be done about that particular idea. It seems that it's less a legal question and more of it is it the best choice of how to fund this if we wanted to. And then of course all the issues that Mayor Schul lifted up. So I think if you have specific legal questions, again, Krista is with us today and could answer some of those initial questions from their work and research. And I appreciate everyone in her office that has been supportive and helped us kind of think through some of the initial stages of this. That's all I have at this time, Mayor Schul.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Colleagues, I'll now open this up to questions and comments. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ryan. I appreciated the conversation, Mr. Mayor and Ryan, we had regarding these matters. And just for the sake of the public record, I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that we talked about in our meeting. And one of the things I had a question about was giving direct funds to businesses in hopes that they would, I'm sure they're all honest, but in hopes that it would get translated into PPE and stuff like that. And we talked about the possibility of reimbursing businesses as opposed to, or buying en masse PPE and those types of materials. So I'm wondering have there been any further developments on that? And secondly, I also asked, would religious institutions be exempted from this, or would religious institutions be qualified to receive help with these types of funds for PPE and stuff like that as well? So those, I just wanted to put that in public record.
Thank you very much. I think what I'll do, Ryan, I'll ask you to respond to the first part of that question, and Krista has specifically researched the second part of that question is here for us. So Ryan, do you want to take the first part?
The first part, Councilmember Middleton, is yes, we are looking into, and the city attorney has advised the same thing about it being reimbursable for some of the reasons that you've suggested, but there's still work left to be done to kind of figure out that option. But that is one of the things we're looking into is kind of using the reimbursable approach. But we have work left to do, and Krista has been working, as Mayor Schul said, on the question of could it be expanded to nonprofits and churches, and I know she's prepared to speak to that.
Good afternoon, Krista. One other thing I wanted to say is that the manager, council member, raised a lot of the same questions, sort of about how does this get administered, and so that is definitely on the task force's radar. Krista, good to have you. Would you like to introduce yourself and comment on the second part of the council member's question?
Thank you, Mayor. Krista Kukro, Assistant City Attorney in the City Attorney's Office. On the question of supporting churches in the same way that Ryan has described with PPE or grants, that is permissible. Certainly a very complicated area of law with the First Amendment and the free exercise clause and the establishment clause. But after doing some research, we can give PPE and grants to churches in the same way that we would support other businesses.
And that would be for these health purposes exclusively, Krista, is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
Councilmember Middleton?
No, absolutely. That makes sense. I imagine as it would for the other businesses as well. It's got to be, we say the grants for PPE, it's got to be used for PPE. I'm sure churches would be open to getting the in-kind materials as well, whatever the ultimate decision is. But I appreciate the research, Counselor. Thank you so much.
Okay. Councilmember Caballero.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the question around religious institutions. I do have a question around that, though. How do we handle if a business or a religious institution has discriminatory practices that is public, and I'm thinking more around, we know that some religious institutions are discriminatory to our LGBTQ community, and I want to acknowledge that I would not feel comfortable. I know we're in a pandemic, so I just want to acknowledge that I see some areas where I have some concern around that, and how would we address that?
Krista, do you have any thoughts to offer on that?
That is something that I would need to do some additional research on. My gut reaction, just sort of off the cuff, is that I think we have to treat all religious institutions the same. But I'll do some additional research and get back to you on specifics.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, Councilmember Freeman and then Councilmember Middleton.
Just a note, I just wanted to clarify from Councilmember Caballero, you're not saying like, because it's public health, I just want to be clear that I'm not, you're saying like, I'm confused by that comment and trying to.
I'm saying that I would feel uncomfortable and I would like some clarifying information on how we handle, and I understand we're in a pandemic, and so it does open up a lot of questions. But when we start thinking about religious institutions, because of some of the cover that they've been given by our government, I do have questions on how do we handle if there is a religious institution that applies through, different than a reimbursement. I'm not finished.
There are religious.
Councilmember Freeman, let's let Councilmember Caballero finish, and then I'll call on you.
I just want to have that conversation. I want to understand the legality of it. I want to go ahead and know that this is a decision that if we decide that, that's fine, but I want to make sure that we have that conversation.
And I just want to make it clear that if we're having that conversation, the conversation would have to extend to like religious institutions that violate children as well. Like it just goes well beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here and trying to address. And it just seems outlandish, that's all.
Thanks for sharing your opinion.
It might be more understandable if we thought about a religious institution, for example, that discriminated against African Americans. Then maybe that would make it more understandable to you.
Their racism wouldn't stop the pandemic, is what I'm saying. So treating people the way that they treat others is not how you address a public health issue, is what I'm getting at. So making sure that we do what we're supposed to for everyone is most important, so that we can stop the spread and make sure that everyone's safe.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Middleton, I think you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Council Caballero's concerns. I have colleagues who don't speak to me anymore because they think my views are heretical on certain things, and my notion of the love of God being applied uniformly to folk doesn't square with their doctrine. My question emanated from concerns precisely what Council spoke of, the Establishment Clause, and purely because I understand the nature of religious institutions. That's why I asked the question, would they be included? But I certainly do not support any church getting money for the promotion of their doctrinal positions, or not my church or anybody else's church, or in support of what they may teach or preach. This is solely about keeping folk alive. One of the most powerful stories I read were Black trauma surgeons saving the life of Klans members while they were in their robe. There are times when we have to cross lines. Listen, I don't know if any of those businesses, there are some of the businesses who may be getting funds. There are certain businesses in this city that have a reputation of being racist and treating Black folk incorrectly, or Latino folk incorrectly. There's some, I'm not going to name them here, but if they apply for funds for PPE, I mean, if they had past lawsuits against them, or if there's word in the street that they're racist, I don't know if I'm empowered to take actions against them, carve them out specifically as an institution. So there are churches who are loving and open, and there are those who are discriminatory. There are businesses that are welcoming to their customers, and some that suck. So I don't know what metric we can use across the board. Just because you're not a religious institution, you're a business, doesn't mean that you can't be racist or you don't do things that may bring scrutiny upon you. So I think for the sake of the pandemic, from a public health point of view, teachers teach who comes in the classroom, doctors work on who comes in the ER, even if they're wearing Klan robes or Nazi symbols on them, because that's their calling. But I want Council Caballero to know I appreciate the spirit of your question. I really do. But I think that all things considered, this is different. I guess that's really an artful way of saying it. But I appreciate the spirit of your question. I think we have to remain vigilant against all institutions that discriminate and treat people less than with dignity that I think all humans deserve. So I'll leave it at that. But I appreciate the comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. And again, as I said, I just want to make sure that we have this conversation, and I would appreciate our city attorney delving into it. This is not a open shut case for me. I just want to acknowledge that this is an issue that we will have to think through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll ask the city attorney's office to do that. So thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments on this item? Councilmember Freeman.
Just a note that if we're asking the city attorney to find ways to discriminate, I just want to be clear that that's not acceptable.
I don't think that's what anybody's doing. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank again the task force for coming forward with this recommendation. I think there are lots of good things about it. I think as our conversation today has shown, it gets us into some areas that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think those are the conversations we're going to continue to have if we believe that this kind of program is valuable, and I do. I guess my question was more around the source of, I had two questions. First of all, are we going to say that it's for expenditures after a certain date? Or are we going to let businesses submit receipts for reimbursement for PEP purchases since early March? That's one question. The other question is, I want to find out from staff if during these conversations with OEWD and Kevin Dick's group is administering the loan fund, if anybody has reached out to the group of some small businesses that was really the main cheerleaders for the loan and grant program. They, as we all know, had advocated for a larger investment by the city in that loan and grant fund. And I'd really like to understand their perspective when they hear about the idea of taking some of those unexpended loan funds and using it for a different purpose. So obviously, we were prepared to make additional investments in the loan fund as a city if that loan fund had been depleted quickly. What our experience so far has shown us is that that's not happening for a variety of reasons. And so I think ultimately the money, it all comes from the same source. I just want to make sure that we don't break faith with the folks who were advocating very strongly, very persuasively for city support for that loan program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I see the manager may have a comment.
Yeah, I would just say, Councilmember Reese, there were many things that have been said today and some assumptions made that I'm not sure we knew anything about until yesterday. And I don't believe there's been much contact made with the administration directly associated with the utilization of the small business loan fund. We're continuing to evaluate how to maximize that. So I think it would be premature to conclude that that's a source for these. This not that it's not a good idea, but and in lieu of is not something that there's been any conversation with me about.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So you also had another question, Councilmember Reese, which was about reimbursements for previous expenses. I don't know that we have considered that. I certainly hadn't thought about that, but maybe I'll ask Ryan if he has had any thoughts about that, and also could respond to the other part of Councilmember Reese's question about contact with any of the, as he put it, cheerleaders for the fund.
Thank you, Mayor Schul. Councilmember Reese, one of the items in the proposal as it was initially drafted by the task force did have a consideration that some of the funds could be retroactive for businesses that had had by a date, but that date had not been set yet. So that things maybe by April or April 15, again, a date had not been set, but a certain amount of that could be reimbursable under this grant. I think that is an important issue, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I think we went back and forth a little bit on that in putting the proposal together, recognizing that there are some benefits to not having it be retroactive, and that is that you're actually getting more new actions and businesses to make new investments that they haven't already made. And at the same time, there were those who made a compelling argument that you also businesses may be really struggling. They may have done the right thing and made that investment, but may be really hurting, and that this in some ways would penalize those businesses, and it also who had done the right thing and made an early investment, even though they may have been really struggling to find those funds. So I think it is worthy of council's consideration on that question. Should it be retroactive? On the other topic, we have had conversations with some. I don't want to say that we've had conversations with all of the business leaders in our community who were strong advocates for a small business fund. In the conversations that I've been a part of, I would characterize them as supportive of the idea of having more grant funds as opposed to loan funds, even if those grant funds are for a narrowly defined purpose, like helping with COVID-19 investments, because they all know that they need to do it. And in the individuals that I've spoken with, including some who were very strong advocates early on, there was support for this type of idea. But I don't want to say that is that I've had enough conversations that I could speak with confidence about everyone out there.
Ryan, that's really, really helpful. I appreciate that important context. And I think on the question of how far back do we go to reimburse some of these expenses, I guess the question I have is there going to be a cap on any entity's ability to participate in the grant program? Are we going to let a business, say, drop $1 million worth of receipts on our lap, or are we going to cap it at something like $5,000 or $10,000? That would make a difference to me to know that.
Mayor Schul, may I respond to that? So the initial proposal called for grants of up to $5,000, and in part that has been based on conversations we have had in looking at how much things cost that could really make a difference. Even some modest improvements in airflow could be done, in that range that could really make a difference. And even the request from some of the business roundtables talking about some of the investments they were talking about were in the range of $2,000 to $5,000. And so, in the proposal that we brought forward, it was envisioning a maximum grant of $5,000. To your point.
And one final question, Mr. Mayor, if I could, are we talking about currently ongoing concerns? Would the grant fund be open to a business, say, for example, that was no longer in operation, but closed a month ago and had, $2,000 worth of PP receipts from when they were giving it a go? Would we allow that kind of grant to be considered by the fund? And if you don't have answers to this, by the way, I'm just coming up with, I'm just thinking about stuff.
Ryan, you're muted.
I think my general response is that these are excellent comments and questions, Councilman Reese, that points to the work that's left to be done, and a lot of thoughtful work left to figure out the best path forward. But I really appreciate all of your comments. They're spot on in the things that we need to dig into more. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Mr. Mayor, just to close out my remarks, I think this is a great idea. It's obviously we still have a lot of work to do as a staff, as a task force, and as a city council to come to some consensus on the right way forward here. But I think all of us believe that to the extent we can help businesses, other organizations in our community meet the challenge that this virus poses, I think that's a good goal. But obviously we've got a lot of questions to answer about how we get there, and I look forward to having that conversation as a council with staff in the weeks ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm going to first call on Ms. Galbraith, and then I believe Mayor Pro Tem Johnson had a question.
Thank you. So I just also want to state fully that there is a lot of work that still needs to be done, and these questions that you're asking actually will help us go back and do that work. The one recommendation I would have, if we are looking at making this retroactive, and I certainly have heard from many businesses who would like to be able to submit receipts for something that they in good faith put forward and made modifications early on in this. I would recommend we look at going back to May 8th, which was, I believe, the beginning of phase 1. So anything back to that might be a good way to mark this and say, we'll go back to the beginning of phase 1. And again, up to a certain dollar amount.
Thank you very much.
Questions.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I'm in one room with my family right now, and so had a background noise issue earlier. And so I'm going to go back and make comments on the 2 previous proposals, if that's all right. I just want to thank the commission first for all of your hard work. This is really important for our community, and we really appreciate you all digging in and providing so much of your own resources and your time and your energy and your wealth of knowledge to help us all get through this crisis. I'm concerned about the lack of clarity from the county about their contributions. And since we are, proposing to split costs for these first 2 programs 50-50, I think that the budgets are the budgets. We need all of the money to make the programs work. And so I want to make sure that that our colleagues on the county are on board and willing to make some calls and talk to some folks over there to try to ensure that we have their full cooperation. I'm concerned that we won't be able to be as successful if we don't have full support from the county. And so just wanted to flag that as something that I think that council members can impress upon our county colleagues, the importance of a full county contribution to this initiative. With regard to the community resource, community health workers, I appreciate greatly the focus on language accessibility, especially because we've seen hugely disproportionate infections in our Latino community. And I think that it might be a good idea to have even more bilingual reps if possible. The numbers did go down a little bit I think in June we were 75% of our new cases were Latino, and in July it was 55%. So, we're seeing a good trend there, but 55% is still vastly greater than the number of than the population of Latinos who live in Durham. And so having even more bilingual reps who can reach out to that community, more than 4, I think would be helpful. And finally, I look forward to the conversation about whether we want to and how we would provide donations or support to institutions that don't share our values as a city. We're in a public health crisis, and that's a really important consideration. At the same time, I wouldn't want city funding to enable an institution that is acting in a discriminatory manner towards anyone in our community to continue that discriminatory behavior. I think it's important to keep people safe, even if those people are not great, but I do want to make sure that we aren't helping institutions who might have a discriminatory mission to further that mission in any way, or contributing, or that if we are contributing, that we're clear about our interest in that contribution, and that we would state very clearly what our values are and why we would donate to an institution that doesn't share those values. Thank you all again so much for all of your work. We really appreciate this effort, and I look forward to getting this work moving and making a real difference in our community. So, thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no Durham without the religious fabric, the religious institutions that have contributed to the building of the city. One of my great heroes is Pauli Murray, who straddled many fences and walked in many arenas in this city, the religious and the political. some of the leading people on our Renewal and Recovery Task Force are colleagues of mine in the clergy. There are tens of thousands of LGBTQ people who go to church in the city. There are scores of LGBTQ clerical leaders. The church has, and religious leaders in this city, and I'm going to be very clear about this, have been among the leading voices of doing what we need to do. Washing hands, and we've done the PSAs, have been in the vanguard of keeping this city safe, not only contemporarily, but throughout the history of this city. And I want to be very clear, we're not making donations to any institution. These are specific targeted funds to keep people alive, including the LGBTQ people who go to these churches, who lead many of these churches. I don't know what type of litmus test we would come up with or checklist for you to check off before we give you a mask to save your life, or before we put up plexiglass in your pews or at your dining room tables to keep people safe. But I want to be very clear that the biggest discriminatory force in American history has been the government. Some accuse us of being the discriminatory power in this city. And I don't know if any of us on this council are qualified to even ask for the doctrinal statements and the theological positions of faith institutions in our city, and to determine whether or not they square with what we think they ought to represent in order for them to get material to save their lives. I would also remind folks that the people in those churches are taxpayers as well. So the money that we're granting is their money as well. And they have played a role, and I'm proud of my colleagues that are on the Recovery and Renewal Task Force that represent the vibrant, rich, absolutely indispensable faith community in this city, where every week thousands of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters go to try and navigate life, who go for fellowship, who go for restoration and strengthening, who are indispensable members of those communities. So as a government, I don't, it reminds me of another type of situation when governments start asking for belief statements to read through to make sure we're going to give you something to save your life. That is not our place, and that is not our role. And I think that we ought be mindful of that moving forward. And I just want to reaffirm and thank those religious leaders in our community that have been in the forefront of crafting our response and of keeping thousands of people safe. We go to them when we want to hold meetings in the community about crime. We go to them when we need information disseminated. Whenever we need something in this city done, they're one of the first communities that we turn to, because of the scores of people that sit in these buildings week after week, across denominational lines, across racial lines, across theological lines, trying to make sense out of life. So I just want to be very clear that at least I'm not co-signing on any position that suggests that we somehow will be vetting doctrinal statements or positions in exchange for life-saving materials and life-saving activities. I'm sure there are plenty of racists that got stimulus checks from the government. I'm sure there are plenty of institutions who are using the N-word in the kitchen while they're bringing dinner out to folks sitting at those tables. There are some that have been documented. Should we not give them PPE protection as well? So I just want to put that out there, Mr. Mayor, and I want to just reaffirm the position and the role that the faith community in this city has played historically. There would be no Durham without Durham's faith community. Full stop. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Are there any more comments or questions on this item? Let me just say that where I think we are, and for the co-chairs and for staff, I hear broad support on the council for the idea of a risk mitigation fund for businesses. I hear that there are lots of questions still to be answered about how such a fund might be administered, what would be the best potential funding source? Should it be funds that come from repurposed from the existing loan fund, or should we be taking it from, for example, our own COVID relief fund? Should there be other ways of, should this all be, are there other ways that we need to think about this relief? For example, a warehouse full of hand sanitizer and face masks as part of this, in addition to grants. All of these questions I know have been considered already, but I think that not just today, but in the previous individual meetings that we've had, and with the discussion with the county as well, a lot of these have been raised and need to be vetted and thoughtfully considered. And so I think that that's all what you expected today, task force chairs. And I think you've heard a very robust discussion. I bet you weren't expecting the last part of the discussion, but hey, that's what we do here at the Durham City Council. And I'll ask Ryan if there are any final words that you want to add in terms of how you all would like to, I would, could this come back to us in 2 weeks with a more fully, could we be more fully prepared? Because I think, like all of these things with COVID, urgency is the word of the day.
Thank you, Mayor. The task force is prepared to work closely with city and county staff and others to think through some of these questions, to vet it further, and bring a more developed idea back to this group. If it's in 2 weeks' time, I like deadlines. Then in 2 weeks' time, we will get that work done. So this has been a very helpful conversation, and thanks to everyone for your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Ms. Galbraith and Ms. Sims, we want to appreciate again the work that you have done in this tremendous leadership that you have given us. And you've heard a lot of praise, justifiable today, and we're very grateful. I want to also thank Brian Fox, who's here. Brian has been really working, doing all the coordinating with all of our roundtables, and has done a tremendous job supporting the task force as well. All right, colleagues, I believe that we've had all the discussion we need to have on this item 4, where 2 of the items are being moved forward to the consent agenda. I'm sure there'll be some discussion, as Mayor Pro Tem suggested, with the county in between now and then. But I want to express my gratitude to everybody who has been here, Kurt, Pilar, Krista, everyone else, Ms. Magali Marino. Thank you so much, all of you all, for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're up to item 12. And item 12 is the discussion of the council appointment. Let me just take a second here to pull that up. Discussion of Ward 3 vacancy timeline. And thank you to Councilmember Reese for helping lead this and having the discussions with council members and so forth, and providing us with a proposed timeline. And I'm going to turn it over to you for your leadership of this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to my colleagues about the current Ward 3 vacancy and how we might move forward together as a council to round out our appointed number and fill this vacancy in a manner that's consistent with our rules and procedures and also with our community's values. Just as a brief refresher, as you may recall, in mid-April, we came together and unanimously decided to pursue a statutory option for filling the Ward 3 vacancy under North Carolina General Statute 160A-63, which provides that the council will, within a reasonable time of a vacancy, make an appointment to fill that vacancy on a local elected city council. And if no consensus could be reached on that appointment, the seat would remain vacant until the next municipal election, which in our case will take place November 2nd, 2021. And so that is the path that we chose to adopt, avoiding the process that's laid out in our city charter and our city rules, which would have called for us to make an appointment within 60 days of the announcement of the vacancy. And so we proceeded under the statutory option. That was mid-April. At the time we had that conversation, we agreed to come back on August 6th at this particular work session where we are together now to talk about how we could move forward to fulfill our statutory obligation to make an attempt to fill this vacancy. And so over the last period, a little bit, I have had the opportunity to speak to some of our community leaders. I've talked to each council member individually about this process. And in consultation with them and with you, Mr. Mayor, and at your specific direction, today I have provided for the council and to the general public as in the form of the attachment to the agenda at item number 14, I guess it is, my proposed timeline for, item 12, excuse me, my proposed timeline for moving forward to fill the vacancy on the Durham City Council for Ward 3. The process that I'm proposing is identical to the process that we considered and approved and then decided not to move forward with earlier this year for the Ward 3 vacancy. It would call for us to open up applications, the application process on Monday, August 10th for a period of 10 days. And that application period would close on Thursday, August 20th at 5 p.m. 4 days later, on Monday, August 24th, this council would hold a special meeting. I proposed 10 a.m., but we can decide whether or not that's what we want to do, to identify between 3 and 7 finalists for the appointment process. And we can have a conversation once we decide to move forward. We can have a conversation this afternoon about the right way to do that. I thought we had a good process that we used a year and a half ago or so to come up with our finalists, and I would propose doing the same thing then. We would hold finalist interviews Thursday, August 27th at another special council meeting. All these meetings will be virtual under the current Safer at Home order. And as we did, we can again have another conversation about the right way to structure that. But a year and a half ago, each council member, each of the 5 council members who was not Mayor Schul, was given 8 minutes of question and answers, and then the mayor took 5 minutes at the end for a total of 45 minutes per finalist. We started that meeting at 5 p.m. and just went straight through, which I thought worked fine, although that's going to be a long meeting, and so that's something we should talk about. And then I've proposed that after those interviews, at a special meeting on Monday, August 31st, the council would meet to vote on the appointment, and at some point thereafter, at a date convenient to the clerk and the appointee would go to City Hall and be sworn in, and then be prepared to sit for our next regular council meeting, which I believe is currently scheduled for Tuesday, September 8th, in virtue of because of the Labor Day holiday on Monday, September 7th. There are lots of decision points in here that we will have to hammer out together. But I think first and foremost, we should probably have a discussion amongst us and determine whether or not this is the process we want to pursue. I think just in closing, I will say that one of the consequences of choosing the statutory option as opposed to the city charter process is that it got us out from under the 60-day clock that's in the charter during a time when there was a ton of uncertainty in our community about how long our current COVID-19 pandemic situation would last. And there was a lot that we still did not know about the virus, how it's transmitted, how we can keep ourselves safe. And so there was a lot of credence, a lot of weight and rightness to some of the concerns that folks on this council and other members of the community raised about whether or not it was a good idea to move forward at that time. I think what's happened since then is that folks are much better informed about how this virus is spread. We have had some time to kind of figure out what will work for each family and each individual about how we operate in this really situation that's unprecedented in modern times. And I think more to the point, the people of the city have gotten a bit more used to the fact that both this body and our other elected bodies, as well as our citizen boards, commissions, and committees are moving forward in this kind of format. And they have seen over this period of time that this is a process that can be open, that can be very transparent, and can be done, that this process can be done in a way that is consistent with our values and safe. The other thing I will point out to my colleagues, as you well know, the city of Raleigh just went through a very quick process to appoint someone to fill a vacancy on their board. The Durham School Board is in the process of a similar process that will be conducted, I believe, much more quickly than the process that I proposed here. All of which is to say that I think we've got some good examples in other places and here that this is something that we can do in the right way. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and ask my colleagues to share their thoughts with the process. And then if we can reach a consensus that this or something like this is the right timeline, then we can go through some of the decision points. And I know the clerk had some specific questions that we'll want to address once we've determined that we're ready to go forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. That was a fantastic summary. I think that you're absolutely right. What we need to do first is take up the threshold question before we get to the dates and that kind of thing. Colleagues, what I'm going to ask is, your comments to be at this point is, are you in favor of this general process moving forward on a timeline that is similar to the one that Councilmember Reese has suggested, and taking up this general process? So let's have that discussion first, and then we can take up any of the more specific items that people may have. So I'll open the floor for that discussion. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to appreciate Councilmember Reese for that description and all the work that he's done to get this process rolling. Once again, I'm in support of us moving forward on this timeline and look forward to filling this seat as soon as we can in a way that that we feel good about, and that's good for the community. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Okay, I don't see any, so I'll just add my support. I think this is a good, I'll get you in a second, Councilmember, sorry. Yes, I want to agree that I think this is a good process and a good timeline. I think that, yeah, I think it's the way to go. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank Councilor Reeves for your person's job on this timeline. I agree with him. I think it was the right thing to do back when we did rescind our action and delay it until now. I think he's also right that we have learned more. Although we're not out of the woods, we certainly are much more intelligent about this virus and the things we need to do. So I'm heartened by the work, and I'm in agreement with the timeline. I think we should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I also agree with the timeline proposed by Councilmember Reese, and thank you so much for all of your work on this.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I also appreciate Councilmember Reese's work, and I expressed the concern around the low tech, no tech aspect of this, and just making sure that is included into the conversation, and I'm supportive as well as moving forward.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just address that real quick. We have the benefit of having, as a group and as staff, deeply considered that specific issue last time we came together. And we have a set of materials and a set of press releases that were prepared then, and I'm in the process of updating now with new dates, that lay out the process for someone who doesn't have access to the kind of technology necessary to file the application online. And so I think we're very well served by the staff work that went into putting that together, by the raising of that specific issue by you specifically, personally, Councilmember Freeman, 3.5 months ago, such that we are now in a position to field this, and to be honest, in a much better way than we were a year and a half ago. And, when the first time that at least I've been involved in this process, I don't know that we even really ever talked about what would happen if a person didn't have access to a computer. And that possibility is really baked into this particular set of processes that we already put together. The other thing I will say is that for me, the biggest area of concern that I have around access to technology isn't really about the timeline and the application process. It's more around the interview process. Last time we did the interviews, we were able to be together. And so having the applicant at the podium kind of in the hot seat answering questions from each of the members was, I think, an invaluable part of this process. That can be translated to a virtual medium, but I think the video connection is something we're really going to have to think through. I think it's super important. The process as laid out would allow a candidate or a finalist to call in using a telephone if they don't have that kind of technology. But it would be my preference to try to find some way to get every finalist have access to the technology necessary to interact with us in those interviews in a video format. And I'm committing to each of my colleagues to work with staff to make that happen on Thursday, August 27th, assuming that's the timeline we go forward on. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for addressing those important issues. Colleagues, we have unanimity on this moving forward on this timeline. What I would like to do now is actually let us look at the dates. Councilmember Reese has proposed a series of dates which are in your agenda package. I can make all of those dates, but there are really 3 dates. The August 24th, when we identify the finalists. And that would be a special meeting. August 27th would also be a special meeting, and that's at 5. And August 31st would also be a special meeting, that's at 10. So I just would like you all to please, if you could look at your calendars now, and I think we should just go ahead and spend this time so we can get this nailed down.
Mr. Mayor, real briefly, while folks are looking, I will say that there is some method to the madness of the times that I've proposed there. The special meeting on August 24th and the special meeting on the 31st, I envision not to be long meetings. The last time we did this during or at the tail end of a regular work session. Our meeting schedule between now and then won't really allow that to happen. So on the 24th, what I would envision is that we would have some kind of conversation amongst ourselves about how many finalists we're going to use. The last time we did this, we had a meeting between the time that the application period closed and the time we were going to get together and make the finalist decision. And at that meeting, before we came together and chose finalists, we decided on the process, which was that each council member would come to the selection meeting with a list of 7 names of the applicants that we believed were worthy of moving on to the next stage in the process. And then we tallied the sum total of all those names, and there were 7 candidates who received either 4, 5, or 6 votes. And those 7 candidates were the clear choice to move forward as finalists. Let me just parenthetically say that I believe then and I believe now that those 7 people would have made a fantastic city council in and of themselves. And I think we're going to have a very similar caliber of applicants in this process.
This might be a good time to offer them the jobs.
Don't tempt me, Mr. Mayor. So I think, that's one disadvantage we have now is that we're not going to have a public meeting. We're not going to have a meeting between now and August 24th. I guess I should say between August 20th when the application period closes and August 24th when we come together. So it may be that what we should do is decide that we're all going to come to that August 24th meeting with up to 7 names and then decide together as a group how many finalists we want to do. I don't know. I'm open to suggestions on that. Like I said, we had a meeting in between last time that made it easier for us to let the application period close, determine that everybody was eligible, and then we moved forward. We had a meeting where we talked about, okay, here's what we're going to do. I listened to it the other day, believe it or not. It's amazing how much younger I sounded a year and a half ago. We had a little bit of a conversation about, should we come with a list of 5 names or 7 names? I think I came up with the idea for 5 names. So Councilmember Middleton wanted to do 7, and then we'd agreed to do 7, which amazingly enough worked out perfectly, I think, for everything. But I guess my concern with making the decision today, as opposed to waiting until the 24th, is that we just don't know. What if only 5 people apply and we had decided on 7 finalists? What if 8 people apply? We decided on 7 finalists. So I don't know, but I will, this is one of these areas where I don't necessarily have to have all the right answers. I could just tell you this is an issue and we should talk about it. So.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that the 3 to 7 finalists is great. I mean, given that this is a ward seat, I'm expecting that we'll have fewer applicants than we did for the last at-large seat. There may be more interest in local government in a pandemic. It's possible. But I'm anticipating, I expect that there will probably be fewer candidates. And yeah, I think it makes sense for us to figure out as we go through the process how many finalists make sense. I haven't listened to that meeting lately, but I remember advocating for some ranked choice voting, which was ultimately voted down by my colleagues. I won't beat that horse again. But I do just want to use this opportunity once again to extol the brilliance and wonderfulness of ranked choice voting for you all. Okay.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Caballero.
I'm open to leaving it to between 3 and 7, depending on the pool of applicants that we get. We may have a large pool and want to interview up to 7, or we may have a smaller pool and it may not make sense. So 3 may be the right number.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think we have a couple different, well, let me first ask, how do the dates look to you all? Is there anybody who has a major problem with the date? Okay, so we're going to settle on these dates. Thank you for checking. Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Who's got to actually help with these meetings.
Mayor and Council, I do have an issue with the 24th.
Okay.
What's happening is that you're recruiting between August 10th and 20th, and then we have staff who needs to check on tax checks and residency, and that needs to be done in one day. And sometimes I can't guarantee that turnaround in one day.
Can you
pose a problem?
Can you explain why it has to be done in one day? We're getting the, let's say the last application came in on the 20th,
right. Mm-hmm.
You would, because the weekend is there.
We have the 21st, which is a Friday, and we submit that information from our office to the tax office. And depending on how quick they can turn that around,
yeah,
then you would need to have everything ready by Monday. So I would appreciate another day or 2 to process those applications.
That's very, very reasonable.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
I just had a thought that, we're not, if we meet on Monday to pick the finalists, we're not interviewing anyone until Thursday of that week. So if there was anyone who didn't pass that check, they could be eliminated prior to interview. So if we did want to extend the timeline, I think we could give the city clerk's office until Thursday to check people's records.
That's a great idea. Madam Clerk, how about that? That works, doesn't it?
That sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember
Freeman noted in the chat that that the Monday, August 24th meeting, if it could be pushed to 10:30, that would work with her schedule. Is that also true for the 31st? So push both those to 10:30? Like I said, those are very short meetings, I think, and that's why I put them in the morning. Obviously, that's It's a challenge for those of us who are managing homeschooling at that time, but we're going to make it work because we have to. Yeah, I think 10:30 makes all the sense in the world for that reason, as long as that'll work. Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
I have standing meeting every Monday at 11. So if it's 30 minutes, I'm good. And I could push it back a little bit if I need to. But if they're going to be really short, then I think we could do 10:30 and it would work for both of us.
I don't think that we know that the meeting on the 31st will be very short. All of us are going to be wanting to give very, very long speeches about why the person that we support is the absolute best. I'm just worried. I just do have that concern.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we did that last time. Did we? I don't think we did.
No, we didn't. We didn't. Oh. But I'm just saying that that's a possibility. I don't want to promise very short. So it looks to me like we're between. Councilmember Freeman needs to move back to 10:30. Mayor Pro Tem needs to be finished by 11. This seems like a little bit of a conundrum. How about any possibility that it could go from 10:15 to 11:15? Councilmember Freeman, would that work at all for you, starting at 10:15?
I might be a little late, but that's fine.
Are you sure? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, any possibility you could push back?
I can make it work.
All right. So then Councilmember Reese and Madam Clerk, we're going to schedule those meetings at 10:15 on both Monday, August 24th and Monday, August 31st. And that will give us an hour. And I think we should be able to do it within an hour.
Okay, Mayor.
Hang on one second, Councilmember Middleton. Let me just clear up one other thing, which was there's another issue on the table. Oh yeah, which was the 3 to 7 finalists. And it seemed like people had a high level of comfort with us being able to do that then, but I just didn't want to leave this without any people having another chance to comment. Councilmember Reese, did you want to?
Yeah, let me just lay out again what I think the issue is here. We won't know how many people have applied for the position until Thursday, August 20th at 5 o'clock in the evening. Right. And we don't have another meeting of this group scheduled between that time and 10:15 on Monday, August 24th. And so we're going to have to somehow figure out what each of us is responsible for doing when we log into the meeting at 10:15. The last time we did this, we knew we were going to have, each member was required to bring a list of 7 names. Not 6, not 8, not 1, Councilmember Freeman, but 7 names. And so we knew that then because we had that conversation. We're not going to have that kind of meeting now. And so I think that's something we've got to at least talk about today and how we want to manage that. It's certainly possible that we show up at 10:15, make that decision then, and then submit our lists and turn them in. That's certainly possible. And I think it shouldn't take that long. We're not making speeches. We're just deciding that portion. But I am a little bit concerned that there could be a problem if we have decided there's going to be 7 finalists, that we have 10 applicants, and we get into a situation where there are 4 candidates with 6 votes and 4 candidates with 4 votes. How do we decide on a group of 7 finalists? We'll have to re-vote at some point, at some level, and working through that could take us past 11:15. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Thank you.
I will just say that if you all will let me be a pretty aggressive chair at that meeting, that we will be able to do it in an hour. If you won't, then we can't. Okay, Councilman, I'm not saying we can't, but our odds are less. If you'll accept a pretty, I like to let 1,000 flowers blossom, but if I only let 300 flowers blossom that day, then I think we can certainly get through it now. Councilmember Freeman?
I would just suggest that we change the language and just note that half of the total applicant pool, or do a minimum of 3, maximum of 7. And that could kind of alleviate some of the angst that I think Councilmember Reese is bringing up.
Can you explain that again real quick?
So noting that we could limit it to a minimum of 3 candidates with a maximum of 7 in mind, based on a total of, or based on a half number of whatever the total applicants are. So even though without knowing how many there are would be, we would come in with the assumption that we'll have a minimum of 3, maximum of 7, and then we can go from there.
But half of the number of applicants, rounded up, let's just make that rule now. So let's say there are 12 applicants. We would be deciding today that we're going to have 6 finalists.
There you go.
Walk into the meeting with 6 names, ranked not in order of preference. As I said last time, mine were submitted in alphabetical order. I think that's a reasonable strategy. I have 2 concerns. Number one, what if only, no, we know, okay, the first one is a concern. The second one is, what if there are 16 applicants?
Maximum 7.
Okay. All right.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Why? I'm just not clear on what you're trying to achieve, Councilmember Freeman. Like, why make us pick?
I heard the why, and I'm assuming, I'm just trying to address or alleviate Councilmember Reese's concern around having the 3 to 7 open, and saying, like, if you wanted to just make it as clear as possible, like a clearer scenario would just be put a min and a max on it. That way you don't have to pick whether it's 3 or 7. It could be.
I think that is the proposal, is to have between 3 and 7. Is that wrong?
I think what the twist that Councilmember Freeman is putting on it is that until the application period closes, we're not going to know the total number of applicants. So it's difficult today to decide how many finalists there should be, right? Councilmember Freeman is offering a process by which mathematically that could be determined without us having to have another meeting. So that when we walk into that August 24th meeting at 10:15, we each have a list, and more to the point, have sent it to the clerk already, I hope, with that X number of names already filled out. Because otherwise, if we don't have a process predetermined to figure that out, we're going to have to hammer that out when we get in the room. And so I think that's the reason for the proposal.
Well, let me just, I think we're all in agreement that we want to walk into the room with some number that we can talk about in a minute, between 3 and 7. We have if we want to talk about this again, we can talk about it at the work session on the 20th. Do we have a work session on the work session on the 20th? But I would just say that I'm not anticipating this being a problem. We're going to have we're going to be able to work this out, you guys. We'll figure out a number that we'll walk in with, and then everybody will come in with their list, and we'll figure it out. It'll be between 3 and 7. I just think we're going to be okay.
But Mr. Mayor?
Madam Clerk.
And Mr. Mayor, can I make a recommendation? I can put together an electronic ballot with all of the applicants on that ballot, and then you can each fill out the electronic ballot and then receive the summary of all the applicants so that you can see it graphically.
Good idea. Thank you.
Like to do that?
That'd be great.
Okay. And now
Diana.
Councilmember Reese.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. We can figure it out, but the underlying presumption or assumption of what you're saying is that we're going to walk into that room with an X number of names ready to go. But we can't, for example, have an email conversation amongst the 6 of us about that, because that violates open meeting laws. So we either have to figure out what the number is today, or we have to figure it out in the room and then then cast our ballots. I don't understand how it happens any other way.
Okay, then I'll make this suggestion. However, any number of, gosh, I almost went to ranked choice there. Any any number of names that we have, we up to 7. We all rank 7 names. And then we put them on the electronic ballot, and then we are able to look at, and if there are only 5 applicants, we rank 5 names, and then we're able to look at each other's rankings, and we're able to discuss at that time how many of those people we think ought to go forward.
When you say we rank 7 names,
or 5, or however many are, up to 7. But if there are only 5 applicants, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We each bring that list in, and then we see, we've already seen on the electronic ballot everybody's rankings, and then we're able to discuss that and figure out how many of those we want to move forward. But we have the benefit of everybody's rankings of up to 7.
Okay, what does the ranking do to help us?
What the ranking does to help us is it lets us know that 5 of us thought that candidate X was awesome, and so candidate X is clearly one of them. But when you get down to the tail end, maybe there's some discussion about who those people are, of whether or not they should be considered.
So would it be more in line to put it alphabetical than ranking? Because if you're just going to do 5 or more,
well, then you don't get any information from other people's ballots before you get there. Look, I'm comfortable with saying we all come in with our list. I think we all come in with a list of people that we think ought to be finalists, and then we hash it out in the room and we do it in an hour. I just am completely comfortable.
Sounds great. Let's do it. I'm with you.
All right. Everybody okay with that?
5 us. You'll make it happen. 7. If there are 7 or more applicants, we need a list of 7 names. If there are fewer than 7 applicants, well, that'll be easy to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, there are all kinds of other things we could do, but we can do this in an hour. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what I think the ranking adds is that then if we decide to have fewer, then everyone has a list. So no, we're not scrambling to figure out if you just have 7 people, okay, well now I have to pick 4 of them. Who are my top 4? We've already hashed that out. And in the event that we have 7 finalists, then we're done. So time saver.
Y'all want to rank them ahead of time?
I don't, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We won't. You're the boss, Charlie.
I'm not the boss. I'm not the boss.
You're the boss of this thing, and we're going with it.
Oh.
Okay. We're going to bring our names in. I see a thumbs up from Mark Anthony. Okay. We've hashed out several issues. Let me say what I think we know so far. We're going by this process. We're going by the dates and times that Councilmember Reese has listed, except for the 2 meetings that were previously beginning at 10 are now going to be beginning at 10:15. We're going to come to the meeting with a list, rank yours or not, your choice, to the meeting of candidates that you think should be finalists. No more than 7, no less than 3. That's what we know so far. And I think that's a lot to know. But let me ask, are there other issues that people want to raise or things that I have missed so far? Councilmember Reese.
I understood you to say a moment ago that we would all come to the meeting with a list of 7 names, assuming there's 7 or more applicants. What you just said was everyone would come with a list of between 3 and 7 names. Which of those do you mean for us to use going forward?
I said that you should be the person that tells us what to do. Do you have some advice?
Yes. Last time we did this, we had a very robust conversation around this specific issue. And we decided that it was really important that everyone come with 7 names. I can't remember why now, and I've asked a couple of my colleagues and they can't remember either. This is really highlighting my competence as someone who should be managing this process. So
Great.
It was because I would have voted for the same person 7 times. That's why.
Okay. All right. So I think that I guess I don't see any reason why I should come with 7 names if I only think 4 of the people are qualified to be on the Durham City Council.
Let's see how it works out. Let's do it.
Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, my thing is that it's about the applicant pool. If there's lots of folks who apply, then you might want 7. If there's just not, then we don't need 7 folks and it will go faster. And we don't know that. That's an unknown variable at this moment.
Fair enough. Let's do it. What you said, Mr. Mayor. Between 3 and 7 names. Got it.
Between 3 and 7 names.
I'm there.
Okay. Colleagues, is there any other issue that anyone would like to raise? And if not, I'm going to try to summarize this into a potential motion. Councilmember Middleton.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say very quickly. Firstly, you as an aggressive chair, I keep picturing Mr. Rogers hopped up on like Red Bull, so that should be interesting. And secondly, August is
I'm gonna get the Red Bull before the meeting. Good idea, and I'll get my cardigan sweater too.
I just want to say August is like officially my vacation month, so if there's anything going on in the background in those meetings, I can't be held responsible for it. So, but I'll be there.
Thank you very much. All right, colleagues, I'm going to try to summarize this, and then I'll ask for a motion.
So move. Hold on.
Wait a second. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I do have a couple questions. What about the applicants who applied in this thing? Do they need to reapply?
Councilmember Reese.
Thank you for raising that, Madam Clerk. I guess my question was, when those folks applied, were we still having the character limit problems?
Yes.
Did some of them apply under the old, really bad character limits?
Yes.
Okay, that's probably not cool. So we should at least give them the opportunity to give a fuller answer to some of the questions. That's my
I would say, Madam Clerk, that everyone should have to reapply, but that we are especially contacting those who previously applied so that they're aware.
Got it. And one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want the applications to be made public from the point of application?
I believe they're public record and should be made public unless there's some reason that people don't think that that's true.
We just have to create a process to do that. That's why I'm asking.
I believe that we should. The public wants to know and should know.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. We have outlined a process which I will try to describe. The process is that we will follow the timeline laid out by Councilmember Reese, with the exceptions of the 10 o'clock meetings moving to 10:15. That we will each come to the meeting on August the 24th with between 3 and 7 finalists who we believe are qualified to be good members of the Durham City Council. I believe that's all I need to, I believe that's a summary of the.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Reese. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll to approve this process?
Mayor Schul.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Reese. Thank you, everybody, for the good discussion. We got into a lot of weeds, but it's okay. We did a good thing.
Mr. Mayor, just briefly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. That's all.
All right. We'll now we now will hear from the manager because our next we next need to go into closed session, and I believe, Madam Attorney, do we need to repeat that language, or can we just the manager's already read the language? Can we simply vote to go into closed session for reasons that the manager has outlined?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. It might be helpful to reread the motion again, just so it's clear.
Okay.
What the motion was.
All right. Mr. Manager, do you want to read that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Freeman has a hand up
Okay.
And also we need to settle the agenda.
Settle the agenda. Thank you. Councilmember Freeman?
I was just going to read the motion. I just so happened to have it in front of me, so.
Okay, hang on just a second. Mr. Manager, let's go ahead and settle the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, a little bit of a confusion because of that item number 4. So I have for consent items 1 through 3, 5, 7 through 10, 12, which will need to be, reconfigured or updated based on your conversation. And then there'll be 2 additional items, I think, that will fall out of item number 4 since they're separate motions and actions. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So I assume that'll be like item 13 and 14, but we just haven't numbered them yet.
Great.
And then for GBA public hearing is item 11.
All right, great. You have heard the manager's recommendation that we settle the agenda. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Freeman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem that we settle the agenda. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes 6-0 and the agenda is settled. And now, Councilmember Freeman, would you like to read the motion? Go ahead.
Thank you. Pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318.11A6, motion to go into closed session to consider the 2 distinct personnel matters. The first consisting of consideration of the conditions of appointment in an interim city manager, and the second entailing investigation of the complaint against an individual employee.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Middleton. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Schul,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The ayes have it. The motion passes 6-0. Colleagues, I'm going to recommend that we take a 5-minute break so I can stretch my legs and stand up from this computer. So we will reconvene at 3:45. Thank you very much.